and welcome back. This should likely be our final segment here for Revelation chapter 8. We were looking at this idea of wormwood, this star being thrust down to earth, and could that be a correlation to the falling of Lucifer? Could this be Satan himself being referred to? I just don't know. There's a lot of speculation here, but I wanted to at least throw that theory out there and let you see some of the justification for it. So we're going to look back into some Old Testament passages, again, the echoes of the Old Testament here, to get a better understanding, a better feel for our adversary, the enemy, the devil, Satan, Lucifer. Let's look at Isaiah 14. How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. And this is actually, if you go back into the Hebrew, this is where we get the reference to Lucifer, the light bearer. You have been cut down to the earth, cut down to the earth. So he's been cast out of heaven, and apparently, in this reference, also been cast down to the earth. We know from other passages, such as Job chapter 1, that Satan is not currently limited to planet Earth. He certainly is here. He certainly has access to it. But if you remember, when the sons of God present themselves before God in Job chapter 1, Satan comes along with them. And God asked him, where did you come from? And he said, I came from roaming to and fro across the earth. So if he came from the earth, then he's not on the earth when he's having this conversation with God. And so the speculation is that he's not limited to earth, that he has access to the first and second heavens. The first heaven being our Earth's atmosphere, the second heaven being what we would refer to as outer space, and the third heaven, which is where I believe Paul went to, and he references it in one of his epistles. That would be the throne room of God that we looked at in chapter 4. And certainly Satan doesn't have access to the throne room of God, we don't believe at this point, but he may have access to these other levels, if you want to speak of, so to speak, of the other levels of heaven, first heaven, the second heaven. He may very well. But in the final days, he's going to be limited to planet Earth, and we'll learn more about that in Revelation chapter 12. But you've been cut down to the earth, excuse me, you who have weakened the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. So here's Satan's sin. His sin is out of arrogance and pride, and he's elevating himself to be above the stars of God, the other angelic host of heaven. And I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. He wants to be like God. It's the same temptation he gave to Eve in the garden. You can be like God if you eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Nevertheless, you will be thrust down to Sheol. So not only is he going to be cut down to earth, ultimately he's going to be thrust down to Sheol, the place of the dead, to the recesses of the pit, the bottomless pit, the abyss. And we're going to see that when we get to Revelation chapter 20. We're going to see that Satan is in fact cast into the abyss. He's cast into the bottomless pit where he resides for 1,000 years. He is bound for 1,000 years during the millennial reign of Christ. Then he's let loose for a short period of time, and then ultimately he's cast into the lake of fire along with the Antichrist, the beast, and the false prophet. We'll get to all of that. Let's look at this passage, a parallel passage out of Ezekiel, talking about Satan. You had the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. By the abundance of your trade, you were internally filled with violence, and you sinned. Therefore, I have cast you as profane from the mountain of God, and I have destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. So we have this picture of, again, Satan being cast out of the God's mountain. And look at Luke chapter 10. This is Jesus speaking. And he said to them, I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Jesus was obviously a witness to this event. Revelation 12, just a fast forward look at that real quick. And the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan. So we absolutely know the identity of the dragon. As we've mentioned before, most of the idioms that are found, or many of them anyway, in the book of Revelation are decoded for us in the book itself, and then most of the idioms that are in the book of Revelation, the symbols that are there, are decoded for us elsewhere in the Bible, and that's been the fun part of this study and will continue to be. So he's called Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. We'll talk about this when we get to Revelation chapter 12. I don't think that's happened yet, but that's debatable. We'll talk about it when we get to it, because I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out too. This is confusing. I study this stuff, and I think I got it figured out, and then I'll see something or hear something or read another commentator or read another part of the Bible and say, I don't know, maybe I was wrong, and coming to that conclusion, and hopefully I haven't been overly dogmatic in presenting some of my views about this. Let's see if we can finish up chapter 8 here. The fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun and a third of the moon. Here's our judgment again of the thirds. And a third of the stars were struck, so that a third of them would be darkened, and the day would not shine for a third of it, and the night in the same way. So now we've got darkness. So we've got the plague of darkness from Exodus 10. And the third of the stars that are cast down. Again, this could be a real physical event where some of these these astronomical entities, objects that are out there are coming down to earth as this fiery hail. That could very well be, and it could also be a reference to the angels who are cast down, because Satan's taking a third of the angels with him. The dragon scoops a third of them with his tail. So we believe that a third of we don't know how many angels there are, but we believe a third of them fell with Satan. So that gives us 2-to-1 odds. So I feel pretty good about that. But at any rate, it looks like now we're seeing this situation where they're being perhaps being cast down to planet Earth, and it could mean either or it could mean both, and that's something for us to consider here. Revelation 12 again, then another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 diadems, and his tail swept away a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to earth. So we've got here in chapter 8 these first 4 trumpet judgments, the first 4 trumpets. We'll read about the last, we'll read up the remainder of them as we go forward. But the first 4 trumpet judgments are here. They appear to be physical. The last 3 that we'll start into with chapter 9 appear to be something not physical, something supernatural, something demonic. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. And we're also going to see that these next 3 trumpets, the final 3 trumpets in this series of 7 trumpets, are referred to as the 3 woes. Then I looked, and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. So I want to point this out to you once again. It's referring to those who dwell on the earth, the earth dwellers. There will be Christians alive on planet Earth during this time period that we call the tribulation period, and certainly in the final 3.5 years that Jesus referred to as the Great Tribulation. Regardless of your rapture view, there's going to be Christians, there's going to be believers that are alive on planet Earth, and that is not who's being referred to here. There's other passages that are going to make this very clear for us. I think chapter 13 is where we'll get into this in more detail, that these are the earth dwellers. We all might be, living on planet Earth currently, but this is not our dwelling. Our dwelling is in heaven. Our citizenship is in heaven. We're just a passing through, as the old song goes. So we haven't gone to live there with Jesus yet, but he went there to prepare a place for us, right? So that we could be with him forever. So that's our dwelling, that's our citizenship. So some of these references here as we go through, and we'll get into it more with chapter 13 with the mark of the beast, this is going to apply to the earth dwellers, the unregenerate who dwell on planet Earth. And we see this idiom used to describe the unregenerate throughout Revelation. It's those whose names were not found written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Our names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life before the foundation of the world, and we'll have some fun unpacking the Lamb's Book of Life and some other books, including the Book of Life, when we get to chapter 20. But at any rate, there's some cross-references for you if you want to go look these up, where that term, the earth dwellers, or those who dwell on the earth, I think clearly is referring to the unregenerate unbelievers that are present during this time period that we're studying about. And that concludes our study of chapter 8 of the book of Revelation. We'll start next time with chapter 9.